even better prepared. So that's what I did, and ended up teaching special education for 11 years. You remember, and it was quite an experience. I loved it, and the thing that I learned about it at the time was I just loved teaching. It didn't matter what it was I happened to be teaching. I taught English and history and worked in science and worked with small groups of kids, and then eventually did get a job in the art department, and did that for 9 years, with the last few years being the art department chair.
Hey, fantastic. So, like I said, I knew you in all of your stages, and
Yes, you
and I remember in each one how enthusiastic you were about what you were doing. You
did.
were always one of those uh, teachers that always had a smile on her face. Kids loved you.
I
Kids
love that one too.
you, you just exuded this patience and this confidence in your students, and they felt that. And I think it's so important that kids feel that anyway, but you were able to show that to them each and every day. So you ended up, you thought about it, you made this gigantic leap. How,
Right.
how did you get to there?
So, like I said, you're, this whole thing is, I know you, the root of these conversations, a lot you started, what did you get your degree in? And I have these 2 bachelor degrees in education, my master's in education, and now I own a gallery. So, there's, and it is a big thrust of the business that I'm in now. It is an arts-based business. So I joke about it because I didn't go to school to become, it wasn't an art marketing degree. You don't get it, or at least I didn't. There was no art marketing training when I went to college. That would have been very helpful, but it didn't exist. So I joke and I tell people that what I've done through my whole life is I've kind of followed these divine little breadcrumbs. And as long as I was really happy and feeling fulfilled in what it was I was doing, I continued to do it. And that if things came to a point where I thought I could be happier, I kind of leapfrogged from one experience to the next. No experience was wasted. And although people that have been listening up until this point might be trying to do the math, like education, art, I was a sculptor, now I'm a painter, like how did you get from one place to the other? But every experience is important, and all of the degrees I got is, even though they sound like they might be disconnected, it all plays into what I do now, all very valuable. So the short version of how I got here is, after doing special education, teaching special education for 11 years, in that time I finished my master's degree. I got married. I had 2 children, and I made children, but I didn't make art, right? And then I was feeding babies and doing all of that stuff, and still working full time. When the art job eventually came along over a decade later, I hadn't made any art in a long time, and couldn't do welding, woodworking, or stone carving in my basement, which is what I had done in college. So I taught myself how to paint. Uh, I had an A painting class in college, but it was a part-time professor, and he was abysmal. I won't name him, but it wasn't good. And then I had a sculpture professor who was amazing, so I became a sculptor. Took a lot of that experience and taught myself how to paint because I wanted to be able to pass on those skills. I felt hypocritical not making art and yet teaching art. There was a disconnect. The art took on a life of its own. I started thinking about my art as a business practice, as well as an asset to my teaching practice, and started to have my work photographed and started turning it into products and marketing it. And it became another full-time job. I got very lucky, kind of luck plus hard work. It started to become an awful lot with a young family and a job as a teacher and this other job as an artist. And all of this, as you remember, was right in the middle of the whole reform movement in education.
Oh God, yes, yes. No child left behind.
which was the ironic name of that particular bill. And I won't bore people with the details, but No Child Left Behind was really one of the worst things to happen, in my view, to education. And then pair with that, I became a department chair. So I went from teaching 5 classes to teaching 2. So everything I loved about my job, which was working with the kids, creating lesson plans, a lot of that was gone, and I was having to evaluate teachers and design lesson plans around Common Core, which, again, I won't go on a diatribe, but I could no longer say that I was happy every day in my work, and that was no fault of the district. That was federal mandates that trickled down, and it was just a culture shift within education. But at that point, it was kind of a breaking point for me, because everything that I had been doing with my art was had gained momentum. And I'll talk a little, because you want to get into, how do you actually make money at this? I can get into that a little bit more later. But the things I'd been doing had worked out. And my husband, who at the time was on the school committee, said to me, "I think you should resign."
Oh, really?
And he didn't stutter. And that was in April of 2015. And I thought about it seriously, and I did the 1-year leave, thinking that if it didn't work, I could always return to my former position. Then I took the 2nd year, which I was guaranteed a job if I came back, but not necessarily my position. And then after that, I really let it go. So that was kind of the evolution of leaving education.
So folks, I'm not ignoring Jen. I'm actually trying to share this out. So just bear with me on that. So I think that is so fascinating, because I remember, so what year did you open your gallery?
So HeartSpot wasn't actually what I left education to do. When I left, all I knew was I take commissions, right? I show in galleries. I had been doing those things. And so my plan was that I was going to build that part of my business. I would continue to paint and show and take commissions. And this is how I would continue to sell products I was merchandising. And that's how I would make an income. But through my work with the East Providence Arts Council, a divine breadcrumb, the city had offered to give the Arts Council a building for an arts center. And then for a multitude of reasons that didn't work out. But it got me thinking that East Providence here, there was nothing quite like it. There was no center, cultural center for the arts here. Okay. And I decided that was exactly the kind of thing the city needed. And I developed a business plan.
Okay. And
worked with the SBA. And here it's the Rhode Island Small Business Development Center. For those of you who, if you're at some point in the future, or if now you're watching this and you're like, I'd love to open a business, but I don't have the background, or SBA filled in a lot of those gaps that I didn't get in college in terms of the financials and marketing. And that enabled me to create a viable business plan and then open my gallery. And I opened on June 3rd, 2017. So we're about to have our 3-year anniversary with the doors closed, but it's the 3-year anniversary.
So I just want to say, I remember when Jen talked about she was going to leave teaching, or take a leave from teaching and start painting. I think I had already moved by that time. But
I think you had.
But I remember, Jen would always put her wonderful paintings on her Facebook page. And there was one I fell in love with.
Yes, you're a collector.
When I came home to Rhode Island to visit, I said, I've got to have that one. So folks, I just have to show it to you. I had to take it off the wall.
Yay, I get to see my canvas baby.
So this is.
There it is. I love that painting.
This is Rebirth. And for me, folks, I wish you could like see there's a little figure. There she is. Let me see if I get that. Little figure down there in the corner. Besides the colors and what this, let me put this down over here because I don't want it to be on the floor.
That's a nice frame you got for me.
Thank you. What it represents, I think that's one of the things that drew me to Jen's paintings because I felt like there was always the story behind them. There was always something about them that touched you. And when I saw that one between the colors and the baby cradled in the hands and then a little figure, and then when she told me the title was Rebirth, oh my God, it was like I had to have it because I felt like in my move, I was going through a rebirth. So it just felt like it was supposed to be home with me. So Jen was kind enough to hold on to it for me so that when I went home to Rhode Island that year, I was able to purchase it. So I am a big fan. Big fan. So tell me about some of your other work and the different series that you have created over time.
So when I first started out, like I said, I was really painting to teach myself. I've always been interested in the figure and the portrait, and that's primarily what I've used as my subject matter. And it's changed a lot over the years. I started with a series of tribal belly dancers that were emerging from natural environments, and then I did a surrealist series that Rebirth is part of, where these different archetypes that most people can relate to the experiences with the tiny little figures representing the viewer. Then I moved into painting portraits, and I started not because I was thinking that I was trying to, it wasn't about selling them. I was painting for me, which I think is an important point. I'll come back to that later, but you should really paint what's, from your heart and what you love, because when you're passionate about something, people are drawn to that. And it's like a little light, and the moths find you, your people find you. So a big mistake a lot of artists make, I think, is they paint what they think other people think they should paint, as opposed to painting what they think they should paint, because it's too weird or too out there or whatever. They're afraid they're not going to sell. But I started painting famous people because I wanted to see if anybody could recognize who I was painting. Was I successful? And so I started painting a couple of well-known folks, but I painted them in the Dia de los Muertos style, the sugar skull style. I had just taught a lesson with some of my students, and I was fascinated with the ideas behind Dia de los Muertos and the celebration of the cycle of life as opposed to mourning the end of life. And I did over 100 paintings in that series over 2 years. But then that's when things really started to take off. People started to take notice of the work. I went from 300 fans on Facebook to 3,000 fans in a very short period of time. And then moved from that into another series where I was painting flesh tones and what I call the Sacred Heart series. And now it varies. I'm not really in a series. A lot of what I'm painting now actually is commissions, which is a good thing. It's nice. You know that it's sold when you start to paint it.
Yes, that is wonderful. So folks, so those of you that aren't familiar with Jen's work, I'm definitely in the show notes. We'll put all the links to her Facebook page, to her Etsy store, and to whatever else that we have to make sure that you get a chance to see the wonderful art that she creates. So tell me some of the things that you do in the gallery besides the paintings that you have up there. And because I know you also have a small shop in there that has works from other artists.
Right. So in terms of my income, which is a lot of parents or, watching this, or kids watching this, are going to have the sentiments you were talking about earlier. There are a multitude of career paths you can follow in the creative arts. Tons and tons. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. There's nothing here. This screen behind me, originally painted by Van Gogh, the screen designed by someone who designs products. The video games that you play, the cars we drive, fine art, music. There is so much. There's art around us everywhere. So there isn't just one way to be an artist, right? I have multiple streams of income, which is, in my opinion, today in 2020, very, very important. So I paint, sell work, I take commissions, I show in my own gallery, but I still show in other galleries because it's important for me to get work in front of the eyes of new people. Other galleries have a different set of followers, and it's just smart to do that. Within the art center that I own, which ironically is right next door to the high school, and I can see my old classroom because the universe has a sense of humor, I have a teaching space. So I work with little kids through older adults. And I have a stable of about 12 different teachers that come through and teach different things. So it's education, and we're really an educational center that is geared towards working with the beginner. We do have some advanced classes, but it's really kind of art for every person. I've set up the business so it's an asset to anybody, regardless of whether or not they think they can make art. It's like therapy. You come in, it's good for the heart, soul, body, mind, spirit to just sit and create and play with materials. So there's the educational piece, which brings in money. Then there's the gallery. Under normal circumstances that are not COVID related, we change the shows out about every 6 to 8 weeks. And sometimes there are multiple artists that I show. Sometimes it's just a single artist with a solo show, but there's always a gallery opening tied to that, like a big free party. And there's a lot of organizing that goes behind that. So in terms of being a gallerist, I'm looking for jurors, or I'm jurying shows myself. It has a lot to do with understanding layout and design and hanging work and this carpentry work, because you're fixing the walls and renovating things in between shows. And then yes, there's also a gift shop in my place. So I feature the work of right now I have about a dozen or so artists that all live within 10 miles or so of the gallery. And so I sell local work, magnets and mugs and reproductions and small paintings and drawings. So it's lots of little pieces. It's a lot of things that come together to bring in multiple streams of income. And then I have an Etsy shop. I do that as well. It's temporarily on vacation because the printer that I use is closed because of the pandemic, but it will be back up and running soon.
So what I want you to hear, folks, several things I want you to take away from this. First of all, the idea of having transferable skills. So when students will come to me and they're all upset about, I don't know what I'm going to major in. What am I going to do? I need to know my major. I need to know my major. What they don't understand, and sometimes what parents need to understand, is students often go to school and change their major multiple times. Now I know four times? Okay. So I know you don't want your students to go and change multiple times and then they're there on the 10-year plan. But it's so important to remember that skills that people learn, skills and knowledge that you learn with one degree, are certainly transferable to other career pathways. It doesn't mean this is the only thing you're going to do. Then when you transfer those skills, as Jen did, look at the multiple pathways that she's on. Look how she's using all of those skills. So she talked about, having multiple streams of income. But in order to do that, she had to take all those skills she learned along the way and use them in different ways. And it's working. So this is one of the most important things I want people to understand. Don't get hung up on the major. But then when you do find what you want to do, and it may take some time. I mean, there are people my age that are still trying to figure out what they want to be when they grow up.
Yeah.
So it's okay. It's okay. And as Jen said, I know this is, people hear this, oh God, we're using that word passion again. But if there's not passion in the work that you do, it really makes it more difficult for you to go out and be the best that you can be.
Right.
So what advice would you give to some young person? So right now, for example, I'm working with a student that's a junior.
Mm-hmm.
He was originally supposed to go to a summer camp actually at the Rhode Island School of Design.
Yeah.
So of course that's been canceled. So one of the things that she has to do is to create a portfolio.
Mhm.
So what would you suggest to somebody that's under COVID-19, can't really go out and take in-person art classes or get that, you know, face-to-face help? So what kind of suggestions would you have for someone, or even someone that's interested in, um, who think they do want to major in art and become an artist?
So if you're going to go to school for any kind of fine art, every school has its own set of admission requirements in terms of a portfolio. RISD, for example, forever has had the bicycle assignment. That's been part of the gamut of things that they expect. So the first and foremost, students should be, the junior year is a good time to start looking. Start looking at schools you think you specifically want to go to. Regardless of what you want to do, if you want to be a photographer, or you're doing education, or you're going to do painting or sculpture, interior design, you're going to have to submit a portfolio. And the core of the portfolio, you need to draw from life, and then you need to draw from life again and again and again. Regardless of what institution you're applying to, they're going to be looking for a core portfolio work that's drawing from observation or painting from observation. So that's critical. In terms of individual schools, different schools like RISD has the bike assignment, different schools have specific requirements. So, as early as the sophomore, junior year, they should start exploring the admission requirements for the schools that they're interested in and start building up, creating a lot more work than the number of required pieces for the portfolio. If they say they're looking for 20, over a year or two, you should be trying to crank out 100 to 150 pieces. A lot of them are going to be not good. A lot of them are, it's about the process is where it's important. It's process over product a lot of times. They should be constantly drawing. They should have when I was that age, I had a sketchbook in my bag that went with me everywhere. So they should be trying to fine tune a portfolio that is meeting the requirements of the specific schools, but also the core of it should be able to trickle over to a number of schools. So they've got a lot of flexibility. But it's I know that sounds like a lot, but they should be working. It's hard work.
It is. It is hard work, and especially if you want to go to, a school like RISD, because it is pretty selective. Um,
Incredibly.
but I always tell students, you hear of schools, you hear those names, you hear RISD, and you hear, Savannah School of Art, Savannah College of Art and Design, and
Love
others.
that campus.
But it's always important to, there are schools that maybe you don't think of them for art, but that have fantastic art departments. I had so one of the things I did the last time I was home. So part of what I do is, I also visit colleges as part of my work. I had not been on Rhode Island College's campus in I don't know how long. And I said, oh, every time I come home, I visit all these other schools, but I haven't been on Rick's campus. So one of the last times I went home, I said, I'm going to do a formal tour. I'm going. I was that whole Alex and Ani building.
I haven't seen it yet. Shame on me.
Oh my God. But one of the things I remember back when I was a history student at Rhode Island College, one of my suite mates was actually a student from Connecticut, and she was majoring in art. And I remember back then being so impressed with what she was doing and what she was learning. So folks, this is to say, look beyond those name schools. Look, you're looking at the art department. And you
Right.
can go on any college's website, look at their art department, and then start going through it. Look at the faculty, look at the type of work the faculty is doing. Look at maybe what they're doing with their gallery, or what other types of activities are going on. So don't get so wedded to the idea that you have to go to a school that is an art school.
Amen. And in terms of state schools, that and again, it's Rhode Island, but this isn't just a Rhode Island thing. Rick is a state school, and it's near this giant Rhode Island School of Design. A ton of the professors I had, not the one that I had that I talked about earlier that I said was bad, not him, but a lot of my foundational core class professors were adjunct at both Rhode Island College and Rhode Island School of Design. They were teaching at both schools. So if there's a state school that's got a strong program that's in a college town, you're likely to get some really amazing professors for, like, I paid state school money and I got an incredible, that art department, their full-time faculty was incredible. So absolutely, you shouldn't write it off. I went to Rick because I knew the art department was amazing and I knew that they were well known for teaching and I wanted to be an art teacher. So it made sense. It's not about the name as much as it is about the program.
Exactly. For kids and parents, this is where you have to do your research. So you
Yeah.
can't leave something like this to the last minute. So this isn't something you're going to do like in March or April of senior year. You to really expand your options and to find out what's out there for you. This is something you need to start, especially if you think that's the pathway you want to go into. You know, I would start looking maybe sophomore year, and then really get intentional about it in your junior year, the beginning of your junior year, because there are so many art programs out there. And to be able to look at the big art schools, the medium-sized art schools, and then those state schools and other liberal art schools, that you want to look and see what is their art program like, because that's where you're going to be spending your time.
Right. And ultimately weighing out, what is it that you want to do? What's the application? And what is it worth? Are you going to, if ultimately, I was, again, personal example, but you can go through this yourself. I knew I wanted to be a teacher. I knew about what the first step payment, first step salary was for a teacher. I knew that I could afford to go to Rhode Island College and come out. I came out debt free, right? So I came out debt free and I went into a job and I didn't have this huge burden of hundreds of thousands of dollars of student loans hanging over my head. So being smart about, and this is for any major, be smart about where you choose to go to school. Think about, do I need advanced schooling? Am I going to need to take on even more tuition? And what's my earning potential on the other side of this? Am I willing to work multiple jobs until I get the dream job in the field that I'm looking at? How hard am I willing to work? Because as much as anything else, if not more, it's how much work you put in. And both in school and once you graduate from school, that's critical. What can you take on and what are you willing to do once you get out?
That is so, so true. Jen, I thank you so much for this, because I think it's so important that young folks have the options to explore careers, to explore the different pathways that are out there for them, but also to hear from people that are actually in the work. It's one thing to say, oh, well, this famous artist, this is how they did this or did that, but to actually hear from somebody who is experiencing this right now, even though we're in the midst of COVID-19.
Won't last forever.
Because I know I follow your Facebook page religiously, and there were some nights when you would be doing a live painting, and I would just sit back and just say, wow, look at her create this. I would just be sitting there getting so excited for you, because it was just, I can't draw stick figures, so.
I hear that a lot.
I know. So I just sit back and I watch the different work that you do. I watch the collaborations that you do with other local artists. You just did this wonderful painting with Paul Morse.
Yeah, that was great.
Awesome.
And it's going to hang in the oncology department at Rhode Island Hospital.
It is. Oh my God, that's fantastic. So folks, one of the things I'm definitely going to do, like I said, in the show notes, I'll make sure you're connected to Jen's Facebook page, because you really need to see this beautiful, beautiful collaboration that she did with another Rhode Island artist, Paul Morse. And also, I've watched on your Facebook page as you've been teaching your classes, and of all ages.
Yeah.
That's what I love. I said, oh my goodness, look at this. I said, this is really cool. I guess because because like I said, I knew you from when you first started teaching as a special ed teacher and then moving on to art and then moving on to full-time artist and then becoming a gallerist. And then I just said, here's someone who took that leap of faith. Somebody asked me the other evening what was a quote that I really liked. And one was, faith is taking the first step without seeing the whole staircase. And I said, that is
scary, but so important.
yes, yes. But you also have great family support.
Yeah, which is key. What I do wouldn't exist without that.
You have great family support, and I'm always so thrilled when I see those pictures of you and your husband, and he's just so supportive of you. And I'm 700 miles away, and I'm sitting here looking at the pictures and grinning from ear to ear. And I'm like, oh, look at this. This is like just so cool because what you're doing is hard work.
It is. It's a lot of work. And if he hadn't done that, we made a lot of sacrifices to make it happen. And I did that. I was 42 years old when I made that decision. And so it was scary, but it was worth it. In terms of people out there, students who are looking to go towards fine art, one other thing that I do is I do art coaching. So there's some people that do life coaching. I've got a session tomorrow. One of the things, and I work on things with people, and you can have a really good stream of income from fine art if you're doing it the right way for you. And that's a whole other piece of the puzzle, but it's really important to put yourself out there and to utilize social media the right way and to do the networking and to do the hard work and to take more classes if you need it. It's a constant, I still take classes myself. It's an evolution. You never stop learning. And that's a whole other piece, and that's not necessarily something you get in college, but it's important to know that it's a big piece. It's a business,
right? It is
like any other business. So it's another piece of the puzzle. It's not a bad idea, when in doubt. In college with electives, if you're an artist, take a business class. Take a basic business class. It will don't reinvent the wheel. It's good to have some of the basics under you because it won't necessarily, probably will not be required as part of your programming.
Exactly. That's a great point that you make because what we're starting to see, not just because of what we're going through right now, but even before that. We're starting to see where people had to become more entrepreneurial. And the more that you can learn while you're in college before because you don't want to be, learning on the fly. So anything that you can learn in school, because just about every college now has some entrepreneurial classes.
Right.
You actually take the class in your current college. There are so many wonderful things online, like Coursera has courses, MIT has courses, edX has courses. So you can always find those entrepreneurial courses. Your local community colleges all have small business centers. And a lot of those small business centers do have classes on entrepreneurship. That's actually how I got a lot of my training is through the Fayetteville Technical Community College because their Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship gives these wonderful free seminars that are so good. And I still go to them. Well, I don't go to them right now because we're not there. So every now and then they will have one online. But the Women's Business Center here in Fayetteville, they do online classes. So it's important that you do, like you said, stay being a lifelong learner.
It's so important because things change rapidly. Things changed rapidly before, right? Two generations ago, things were moving fast. But try to think of adults in your life, of people in your life that haven't had to make a leap or haven't had to make major adjustments to their careers, that haven't had to be flexible. Being flexible is the name of the game, and in order to continue to engage in work that makes you happy, you've got to keep up with the things that are changing with it, the technology in the world and the cultural shifts. I'm a gallerist. galleries are, you know, not what they were a generation ago, but they are an incredible tool and should be used as such, right? I still hang work in galleries that are not my own and pay 50% commission fee because it's an investment, right? It's an investment, but it's not the same. When I was getting out of college in 1996, if you wanted to be a fine artist, you needed to secure gallery representation, or that was it. Now you don't necessarily have to.
Okay.
You know, you can run an entire art business independent of galleries. But if you know how to utilize galleries as part of your business, you're going to be all that much better off. It's things grow and change so rapidly and so quickly. So staying on top of whatever it is you're doing in the creative field or any field is important.
That is, I am just so thrilled that you agreed to come on this evening because, like I said, every time I go home, I do try to make it visit to your gallery because I'm just so in awe of you and your talent and what you do because you just create some absolutely, your work moves people. And
That's very nice of you to say.
well, you know, it's not just empty praise. It really, I mean, it really is. When you were asked to do a commission of someone in East Providence, and Dr. Izzy Ramus was the one that was chosen.
I was delighted.
Oh my God, Jen, that was like, you know, Dr. Ramus is the person that kind of hired me my first teaching job.
Me too.
So it was like and he's always been a champion for kids, and he was a champion for me my first year teaching. You know, first year teaching. And he was always there.
Just the first year, you're lucky. It was my first 3.
Oh God, and to see the work progress as you were doing that painting of him was an absolute joy to see. I kept waiting for the updates. And I said, oh my God, look at this. This is so cool.
I consider myself incredibly lucky that I'm in a place in my life now where I have developed at least, and I'm far from done from developing. Like I always pushing, always learning, always trying to get better. But I'm at a place now where I can apply for these kinds of grants and I can take on these commissions that are meaningful and weighty, like painting the first Cape Verdean mayor in the country, Dr. Ramus, right? Doing things like that. It's such an honor. I'm so incredibly grateful that this is where I'm at in my life right now, that so much of what I do is also meaningful to my community. That's a very important thing for me. I try to give back as much as I can and do as much in my community as I can. It's just important, incredibly important to me. So I'm just blessed.
Talk a little bit about, because my ear caught when you said grants. Talk a little bit about some of the grants that you've been awarded.
So it depends on where you live. I'm lucky enough that I have been the recipient of a statewide grant for our state council for the arts. I put in for a grant for a public arts project as an individual artist and received that grant, and then was able to build momentum on that and received a legislative grant that came to me via the Arts Council to paint more people from the community that people from the city voted on. One of them's done and 2 more are in the works. We have to wait till this is all done to do the presentation. But they're out there. You know, start local. That networking piece I was talking about before, you know, learning who the players are in your area, learning who the organizations are that support local artists. Taking a grant writing class, if you've never done it, it's not a simple thing to do. It's something that requires work and follow through and following deadlines. It's, you know, being an artist isn't just like, you know, sipping your wine or, you know, it's not the stereotypical guy in the beret with the cigarette. It's a lot of butt busting work. But if you have the capability, grant writing as an individual artist is a little tougher. They're a little more scarce. If you get involved with a nonprofit, you can do grants for your organization that then you can participate in as well. But they're out there. They exist, and they're a huge part of a lot of artists' income, for sure.
So folks, Jen has given you some fantastic information about the life of an artist and the different ways that you can expand your options. I think more than anything, that's one of the things I always stress with students and their families. How do you expand your options? How do you keep that path as wide open as possible? So she's just given you some fantastic information. So any of you that are out here watching this either live or if you watch the replay, because you know I'm going to be reposting this and it'll be on LinkedIn, it'll be in other places, please share this with students or even young adults or older adults that you know who are considering a career in becoming an artist, or you know they want to switch over a career or whatever, but you know they want something, they want to do something creatively. I think this the information Jen has shared with you tonight will really give you an idea of what's available to you if you're willing to work for it. That's always the key. You've got to be willing to work for it. So,
Yeah.
Jen, thank you so much for being here this evening.
Thank you for asking. I feel like my life has been a crazy ride and I feel like it was a lot of information. But if people have questions of like in pieces they want to ask, I'll pay attention. I'll be happy to dive into some things deeper if they need to know something more specific.
Okay. What I'll do is I'll make sure I put, like I said, I'll link your Facebook page into the show notes. And that way, folks, you can, you know, always go on there. You can always message. Oh my God, my mouth is not working. I need some of this water over here. You can always message Jen through Facebook. And do you have an email address if someone wanted to email you about follow-up questions, or just would you prefer that they just send you a message?
Do it through Facebook. That's it. So, you know, Northerner, I'm going to say this and people are going to go, what did she say? It's, I'll try to say it without an accent. I'll do it with the accent first because that's more entertaining. Hotspot Art Center. But it's like, what did she just say? So it's Heart Spot Art Center at gmail.com. The name of my gallery, Heart Spot Art Center, which 3 years in existence, won 2 state awards for best gallery in the state because hard work.
That is work. That didn't just happen overnight. That was some serious work going on. That was some serious work. So folks, again, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I haven't chosen somebody for next week yet because I'm thinking, you know, it's Memorial Day weekend and people might be out and about. So you might just have just me next week. But if you have an idea of somebody that you'd like to have their career showcase, let me know about it. And again, Jen, thank you so much. And you just keep on creating that beautiful art that you keep on creating.
My pleasure.
Like I said, I love looking at your work. And, you know, even though the Etsy store isn't open now, folks, I'm still going to put the link up there just so you can see what's there. So that once her person is up and running again, that you can jump on and see some great things and become a Jen collector like me.
I love you. I miss your face. Thank you again for asking.
Oh, you're so welcome. So thank you so much, folks. Jen, just stay on after I stop this. And thank you so much, folks.